I'll admit it, I'm the kind of guy who always asks for that last throw in before accepting a trade, whether it's a future third round pick or some veteran who should probably be on the waiver wire. I want that extra something. So today I have 5 players, all valued outside the top 150 in February 1 quarterback ADP, that I think are the perfect throw-in stash players for the 2023 offseason. Starting with the most expensive player right on that top 150 border is Damien Harris, who is currently a free agent and probably a more forgotten free agent in this amazing running back class. I really like Damien Harris at this price though because of the upside that he can have depending on where he signs. Remember, Harris was the RB13 overall in 2021 and the RB18 during the first 4 weeks of the season last year before injuries derailed the year. But look at his game log from last year. Like I said, RB18 over the first 4 weeks when he was averaging 13 carries and 61 yards per game, plus a touchdown in 3 of those 4 weeks. That's a 17-game pace of over 1,000 yards on 225 carries. The only unknown is where is he playing in 2023 and beyond. For me, I've been just envisioning Damien Harris as a Denver Bronco, as the next Melvin Gordon, as a filler for Javonte Williams while he gets fully healthy, and then splitting reps with Javonte like what Melvin Gordon did. I could also see Harris, though, in Tampa Bay as the Fournette replacement as the 1A, 1B with Rachaad White. Chicago also has a ton of cap that they could opt to pay Harris for cheaper than what they would have David Montgomery. Maybe he's in Philly for cheaper than what they would pay Miles Sanders, or maybe he's just back in New England anyway. Wherever Harris lands, his floor is a high-quality handcuff that's priced where you're buying him right now, but the upside is that Brian Robinson, AJ Dillon tier as an RB3 or a flex play when you need him that could spot start you 10 plus points any given week, maybe 15 plus if he scores a touchdown. So Damien Harris to me is the best player to get thrown into your trades right now. Moving over to wide receiver, Rashid Shaheed down at wide receiver 78 is a super intriguing stash for the offseason, and I actually highlighted him back in January in my must-stash players for 2023. If you take his stats since week 12, his 17-game pace is 62 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 3 to 4 touchdowns. That is insane production just chilling on your waiver wire right now. The Saints offseason this year is going to be incredible to watch, honestly, because they are $30 million over the cap with the second highest average age of players in the entire league. And because of this, I'm skeptical about the kind of player that they're going to be able to bring in through free agency at wide receiver, meaning Rashid Shaheed is probably safe there. So then it's really just down to who do they bring in from this rookie class, which, depending on when they decide to draft him, could be good or bad for Shaheed. Regardless, it seems like Shaheed is at worst locked into a speedy wide receiver 3 role behind Chris Olave and insert rookie here, or at best, he's still the wide receiver 2 behind Chris Olave, but ahead of a day 3 rookie for 2023. I also expect Jameis to be back at quarterback for this season again because of the cap issues and also where they are in the draft. And we know that Winston loves to just air things out, which could also be good for Shaheed. Again, he's just a throw in a trade, or might even honestly be on your waiver wire right now as someone to roster into the summer and just see what comes out the other side. Sticking with wide receivers though, I am kind of surprised to see that Darius Slayton's ADP is all the way down at wide receiver 87, basically 3 rounds after Rashid Shaheed. In case you weren't aware, Slayton played in essentially 13 games last year, and in those games was on a 17-game pace for 60 receptions, 950 yards, and 3 touchdowns on 93 targets. That production shows that he was a big part of the Giants' passing game all season long. Now, you could probably sit there and say that's because they barely had any weapons to begin with, which is valid, but Slayton reminds me a lot of Zay Jones just in 2021 with the Las Vegas Raiders. Remember, Jones had a solid sophomore season with the Bills back in 2018, didn't do anything for 2.5 years until the last half of 2021 on a Raiders team that didn't have Darren Waller and was force-feeding the crap out of Hunter Renfrow every single week. Jones then produces in a small sample size at the end of 2021, becomes a free agent, signs a surprisingly hefty deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then finishes as a wide receiver 26 in 2022. And that's what I think Slayton can do as he is now entering free agency in 2023 in a really bad free agency class of the position as a whole. I mean, you can argue that Slayton is the 4th best free agent receiver this year behind Allen Lazard, Jacoby Myers, and Juju Smith-Schuster. And even those 3 don't really inspire a ton of confidence in the overall talent of the class. We could see Slayton sign somewhere as a team wide receiver 2, like what Zay Jones did, and he could land in Chicago, Atlanta, New England, Baltimore, all of whom have the cap and the need at wide receiver. Or maybe he just signs back with the Giants. He's right back to where he was this past season. And I really wouldn't be surprised if Darius Slayton is that wide receiver 5 or wide receiver 6 that you have on your Dynasty team that you end up starting maybe a little bit more than what you really wanted and what anticipated for this year. But still, that's worth a throw in to me in your trade. Next on the list is another player that I highlighted before back in December as a potential 2023 breakout, and that's tight end Cade Otton for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who is currently going as a tight end 25 outside the top 200 in one quarterback ADP. As many people predicted, the transformation of the Bucs offense has already begun with the news of cutting Leonard Fournette, they're cutting offensive lineman Donovan Smith, and now most recently and most importantly for Otton, Cameron Brate. Otton played in 6 games in 2022 without Cameron Brate, and in those 6 games, he averaged 6.5 targets, 40 yards, 0.3 touchdowns, 10 fantasy points per game, which would have been tight end 9 last year, behind Evan Ingram and David Njoku, and ahead of Dalton Schultz and Pat Freiermuth. And as a reminder, Otton was a rookie last year. Seeing that type of volume is very, very impressive for a rookie tight end. We are always on the lookout for the next breakout tight end in Dynasty, and while Otton may never have the ceiling or production to hit a Mark Andrews, George Kittle, or TJ Hawkinson level, he could still easily be a back-end tight end 1, which does have value as a fairly trustworthy every week start at the position. But I don't think anyone's really looking at Cade Otton to be that kind of guy. I mean, just based on ADP, he's being valued as the tight end 5 just from the 2022 rookie class. Then you add in 2023, all the other veterans, you can see just how easily it is for Cade Otton to just be swept aside at tight end. Even if you don't believe that Otton has the fantasy upside that I think he does, you could still buy low now and then just sell later when his hype train does get going. I mean, look at Chigo Okonkwo. He's the big name right now as a sneaky breakout tight end for 2023. He is currently tight end 14 inside the top 125 overall. And if ADP is any indicator of trade value, you can apparently flip Okonkwo right now for Tank Bigsby or Kendre Miller. So imagine the ROI if you buy Otton now, then flip him later when his price increases as people start to catch on, or maybe he is actually a good fantasy tight end and you just bought Pat Freiermuth as a throw-in in a trade right now. And lastly, I just want to talk about handcuff running backs in general, as they make perfect throw-ins in every single trade. And I'm not talking about like the Alexander Madisons, Kenneth Gainwells, Elijah Mitchells of the world. Those guys are too expensive. They probably can't even be throw-ins in deals right now. I'm talking about guys like Jalen Warren, Zamir White, Jerome Ford, Keontae Ingram, Zonovan Knight, Zach Moss, JaMychal Hasty, the guys that no one really wants on their team. And honestly, you probably made a face of disgust yourself when I named those guys. And I get it. They're not sexy. They're not shiny. They're not even that good and may not even be handcuffs after free agency and the draft. But my approach to these guys is simply quantity over quality, because I know I'm probably going to drop a majority of these guys to make room for rookies in May or June. But if there's just a couple players that I can get for basically free right now that end up making my starting lineup in the fall at any point in time, that right there is a huge win. And I get asked all the time questions like, how can I make this team as competitive as possible? Or I don't have running back depth, but how can I get that? This is how you do it. This is the biggest edge that you can gain in Dynasty with such minimal effort, because nobody values backup running backs until they actually need a backup running back. And if you want an additional 3 players that I'm targeting as throw-ins right now, I actually included them in a member-only video on this channel. So if you want access to that video as well as 6 other videos exclusive to our YouTube members, click on the link down in the description below, join the bonus content tier, and watch all of those videos. Or just click on this video right up here, watch a really cool conversation with Matt Harmon about underrated receivers that we should be buying in Dynasty right now.